Bitch, where's my money? If you want to help me out, you can subscribe to me on Patreon, which is Grimachu, on Subscribestar, which is Grim-Jim, or if you want to make a one-off donation to help support me and keep the channel going, you can do so at paypal.me/JDesborough. Thanks. Hello lovelies. Today we're looking at the Book of Antitheses for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Antitheses being the plural of antithesis, which means the exact opposite or counter to something. It's a bit of an odd book. I will take you through it, but there will probably be a lot of times where I basically use it as a jumping off point to talk about other things, perhaps, as I go through it. But let's prime you for what to expect. When D&D first came out, it coincided in large part with the rise of the Satanic Panic. And the people involved in the Satanic Panic believed that there was a secret worldwide satanic conspiracy that expressed itself through things in normal life, people's interest in the occult, but also people's interest in role-playing games and so on. They saw the presence of good and evil and magic wielders like sorcerers and so on as being bad and evil and wrong, and an attempt to subvert children. It's not too dissimilar to today's QAnon, though the crazier elements didn't so much make it into politics. But that's relatively speaking, because evangelicals, who were very much behind the Satanic Panic, they were also behind all of this, and they did get involved in politics. But this was the crazier stuff. But it was held to by a lot of people. Concerned parents burned books and so on. D&D made an attempt to distance itself from this panic. Again, not too dissimilar to how they are editing and screwing over their own work and history right now in response to a whole cluster of panics over racism, sexism, homophobia, blah blah blah, you name it. Just as willfully irrational, just as stupid, just as dangerous to free expression, but possibly even more so right now. But then again, you also have the QAnons and the Alex Joneses around who think everything's a conspiracy as well. So we're getting it from both sides now, isn't that lovely? Anyway, this book leans heavily into the idea that D&D is satanic, is magical, does have power, that you can take magical praxis that you earn from the game and bring it through to your real life, and vice versa. Somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but from what I've been able to make out from a cursory reading and my own interest in the occult, despite being an atheist who doesn't believe any of it to be real or true, it does seem to fall into that nebulous zone that you might call real magic. But let's get started. Lovely cover with the silver embossing, the hole through it. That's nice. I appreciate those touches, and the sacred geometry on the interior. It's by, I can never remember how you pronounce it. It's either Joe Bittman or Joby Bittman. Artwork by Benjamin Mara. Layout by Alex Mayo. So some of the same sort of people that you often see working on Lamentations books. There's the sigil for Lucifer. Well done, Job. So there are a lot of people involved in gaming who are... that's the Philosopher's Stone sigil, if I remember correctly. There are a lot of people involved in gaming who are students of the occult, shall we say, who regard it with various degrees of seriousness or interest. I think that's something that's also part of my older generation of gamers, because, ironically, because of the Satanic Panic, we became interested in all these things that we were accused of being or doing, and so taking a look at it and reading up on it to add authenticity to our own games. I think that's a common result. It's hard to place this one, whether it is really tongue-in-cheek or whether it's taking itself slightly seriously, he says as he turns to a picture of a creature with a talking bottom. But a lot of what it talks about is rooted in real occultism and symbolism. Where do I even start? The book has the conceit that the game session itself is like a ritual, and it contains sacred objects and tools and ways of going about things. And you can see what it means. Creating a character is like creating a spirit guide to guide you through the other world. Creating a character is like the initial steps in creating a tulpa, if you prefer Tibetan mythology. You gather together around a table with your fellow cultists, and you engage in this consensual and mutual hallucination. There are ritualistic aspects. It goes into dice, the meanings of the various platonic solids, which do actually have occult and natural significance. Just because occultists assign meaning to everything, I don't think you should consider it anything particularly special. Numerology. I mean, we turn people, or putative people, fictional people, into a set of numbers, and numbers have their own magical and mystical significance in various traditions and so on. And as our spiritual characters, we invoke certain effects, we engage in certain rituals, we enact certain powers in order to influence the game world, the spirit world, the other world, the dreaming, whatever you want to call it, perhaps. So this is like a beginner's guide, a bluffer's guide to the occult significance that can be read in to a lot of these elements, right? And you have an occult character sheet, the use of miniatures as idols, invocations, prayers, and so on. It draws quite heavily on Western ceremonial magic, and that sort of tradition. Myself, when I dabbled in the occult, I was more of a chaos magician. I liked the semi-scientific approach of do what works that you have in chaos magic. If you want a primer in chaos magic, read The Invisibles as much as anything about the creation of sigils and how what matters is what works. It doesn't even matter if the occult stuff is real. You can invoke the spirit of John Lennon to do your magic if you want, if it means something to you. And I think chaos magic better represents how modern mythology works. It's a buffet. It's a pick your own. Within that practice, the Cthulhu mythos, even though it's not actually real, it's as real as you need it to be, and so on. Of course, what works has the fatal flaw of it doesn't work. But we have such a fractured mythology. We're not unified around Judeo-Christian sort of values, ideas, and ideals. That we can use that as a common touchstone of mythology, of common stories. Yeah, soap operas have more of a mythical touchstone quality than Bibles or religious books or whatever have anymore. So we don't anymore really have a common language of mythology and meaning, so it's harder to convey to people. God, I could talk about that more, but I won't for now. About half the book is this kind of occult primer, I guess. then we have kind of setting and an adventure utilizing these methods. Now, you know me, I'm not a huge fan of using a lot of space in a book for adventures, but in this case it's actually useful as a demonstration of how you might be supposed to present these things within a game, of how you might use the magical practice in practice, as it were. So it's actually useful here. I will just continue to flip through. Now, I got into a Twitter argument this morning with someone claiming to be an accredited anthropologist who didn't seem to understand the role that myths play at all, or how we might use monsters or demons in mythology to embody certain traits that you might otherwise see in humanity, as morality plays, as lessons, as fictional practice for recognizing bad and wrong things in the real world, and updating our moral and ethical software and so on. Instead, they seem to insist on taking mythology literally. It's one of these people who views orcs as being racist, but you have to be pretty deranged and can't be trusted with fiction in those cases, I think, and should probably be kept away from it, certainly from creating it. To me, that demonstrated part of the problem that we have. We don't have that common mythology. Now, art is, of course, subjective, and that means that no particular read is superior to any other, but it also means that no particular read is superior to any other. If I read D&D mythology and I don't see anything racist or sexist or homophobic and so on about it, that is just as valid as someone who reads it and just sees a bunch of racist and sexist and homophobic and otherwise dog whistles. So then where do we go from there, right? Our interpretations of the same material are not the same, but they're equally valid, yet they claim the right to change the material for everybody else. But that speaks to what I say about no longer having a common mythology or a common method of understanding mythology, when two people steeped in ostensibly the same culture can have such a radically different read on something, to the point of taking offence in one case. It's hard to speak to anything. Now, I don't think games are genuinely occult. I found this amusing more than anything else. It wasn't as useful for me as it might be for other people, because I already had a grounding in a lot of occult knowledge. But I don't believe it, remember. For me, the interesting part were the ideas that it sparked, and various people have tried to play with this boundary between the occult in the real world and the occult in RPGs and the Satanic Panic and so on, and it's usually pretty tongue-in-cheek, and this is pretty tongue-in-cheek as well, I think. I've played with ideas as well. If you want a more serious approach, at least to the magic side, limited to in-game, then I would recommend my own book, Ars Goetia, which presents a ritual magician and demonologist for playing in old school fantasy games, particularly Lamentations. So if you wanted to apply this more in-game, I think that would be useful to you. I don't think we engage in occult practice when we're gaming. I do think we engage in myth-making. Memorable stories about characters in the other world that can be affecting and can linger with you for years, and from which you can draw genuine lessons and things about your own life. You can even apply what you've learned from role-playing, a different personality, a different character, to your own life. In Chaos Magic, we would call this donning a fiction suit, where you effectively fake it till you make it. You pretend to be someone who is more confident, more competent, who has a different core personality to yourself, or you can embody a character from fiction without going crazy like the Tumblr crowd do, in order to gain the benefits of embodying that personality, that personhood. So there I would agree with Scott Garibay that you can learn things from playing RPGs. I just don't think you're going to get occult power. I think you can myth make. I think you can become a better person from what you learn through gaming, from playing other personalities, from living in other person's shoes, which is part of the reason that I think this whole self-insert craze and the inability to separate fiction from reality is dangerous from these kinds of people who insist that everything is a racist dog whistle and so on. But I prefer the artistic approach, but the occult has always been known as the art as well. This is amusing. It can provide you with inspirations for ways to construct adventures and NPCs and to draw additional meaning from your character sheets and so on. But it is not a truly serious occult practice if you did want to do that. But it is really good and very inspiring. So, style. The cover, the format and everything is brilliant. I think the artwork is... I think I would have rather seen a lot of historical artwork and woodcuts and prints and so on, which are all public domain, and you got images of a lot of the demons. I think I would have rather seen some of that. Maybe some more use of interior colour, like an illuminated manuscript or something. It could have been more. The format and the cover, however, great. The interior art lets it down a bit. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 for style. In terms of substance, this is highly specialised. It's only going to appeal to certain people, I think, but it is useful. And if you want a starter primer into ceremonial magic and the kind of magical ideas, thoughts and theories that would underpin the period of Lamentations of the Flame Princess, definitely worthwhile. But it is pretty niche, but good at what it does. So 4 out of 5 as well for that, I think, which makes it an 8 out of 10. But I feel maybe it's more of a 7.5. So yeah, go with that. 7.5 out of 10, but 4 out of 5. So a recommendation, a curiosity, and a different approach to what I've seen in other books that tackle the occult entanglements of the early tabletop hobby. Zang.
Machinations of the Space Princess is an old-school RPG with a sci-fi setting. The rules are familiar and at once innovative. Opened up so you can play literally any alien species you can envision. Purchase it at RPG Now or Lulu.com.
Une manie de vieux garçon, moi j'ai pris l'habitude d'agrémenter ma solitude aux accents de cette chanson. Quand je pense à Fernande, je bande, je bande. Quand je pense à Félicie, je bande aussi. Quand je pense à Léonore, mon Dieu, je bande encore. Et quand je pense à Lulu, là je ne bande plus. La bandaison, papa, ça ne se commande pas.